The official account: Hitler's death in the Berlin bunker. Eyewitness testimonies and historical records. As Soviet forces closed in on Berlin in April 1945, Adolf Hitler and his inner circle retreated to the Führerbunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. According to first-hand accounts from those present, including Hitler's personal secretary Traudl Junge and valet Heinz Ling, Hitler and Eva Braun committed suicide on April 30, 1945. Witnesses claim that Hitler shot himself in the head while Braun took cyanide. After their deaths, their bodies were reportedly carried outside, doused in petrol, and set on fire to prevent capture. Soviet soldiers discovered the charred remains on May 2, 1945, and conducted an investigation. However, conflicting reports from Soviet and Western intelligence agencies led to speculation about Hitler's true fate. Some records, including those from Stalin's government, initially suggested that Hitler might have escaped, fueling conspiracy theories that persist to this day. The circumstances of his supposed suicide. By late April 1945, Berlin was under heavy bombardment, and Soviet forces had encircled the city. Adolf Hitler, realizing that defeat was inevitable, withdrew into the Führerbunker, an underground shelter beneath the Reich Chancellery. As the Nazi regime crumbled, Hitler's closest advisors, military officials, and personal staff remained with him in the bunker. On April 29, 1945, Hitler married Eva Braun in a brief ceremony inside the bunker. That same night, he dictated his last will and political testament, in which he blamed the Jews and his military commanders for Germany's downfall. He also appointed Admiral Karl Donitz as his successor to lead what was left of the Reich. The next day, April 30, Hitler and Eva Braun bid farewell to their inner circle. Witnesses reported that the couple then retreated into Hitler's private quarters. Moments later, a gunshot was heard. When Hitler's aides entered the room, they found him slumped over on a couch with a gunshot wound to the head. Eva Braun was beside him, apparently having taken cyanide. Blood was reported to have stained the armrest and floor beneath Hitler's head. According to testimony from Hitler's valet, Heinz Ling, and SS officer Otto Gunsch, their bodies were immediately wrapped in blankets, carried up to the Reich Chancellery garden, and doused in petrol before being set on fire. The burning of their bodies was reportedly an effort to prevent the Soviets from displaying their remains as war trophies, similar to what had been done with Benito Mussolini. Despite these accounts, inconsistencies in the testimonies, the absence of a publicly verified body, and Soviet secrecy regarding their findings led to persistent doubts about whether Hitler truly died in the bunker or managed to escape. The Soviet discovery and handling of Hitler's remains. On May 2, 1945, Soviet forces stormed the Reich Chancellery and the Führerbunker as Berlin fell. In their search for Hitler, they encountered several Nazi officials and bunker staff who had either committed suicide or were captured alive. The Soviets were particularly focused on finding Hitler's body to confirm his death and present proof to their leader, Joseph Stalin. According to Soviet reports, the remains of Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun were discovered in a shallow crater in the Chancellery garden, partially burned. The bodies were said to be charred beyond recognition, but remnants of Hitler's jaw and dental work remained intact. Soviet intelligence officers, under orders from Stalin, secretly transported the remains for examination. Hitler's personal dentist, Hugo Blaschke, had previously created a detailed record of Hitler's dental work, which Soviet investigators used to confirm the identity of the remains. The examination of the skull and jaw fragments, along with a set of dentures retrieved from the scene, suggested a match with Hitler's dental records. A forensic team concluded that the remains likely belonged to Hitler, but Stalin was not satisfied with the findings and withheld the information from the public. Instead of immediately confirming Hitler's death, Stalin allowed rumors and conspiracy theories to spread, even suggesting to Western allies that Hitler might have escaped. This fueled global speculation for years, with various reports claiming that Hitler had fled to Argentina or another secret location. The Soviets kept Hitler's remains in strict secrecy. Over the years, they were reportedly buried and exhumed multiple times. Eventually, in 1970, under the orders of the KGB, the last known remains, fragments of Hitler's jaw and skull, were destroyed, except for a few pieces kept in Russian archives. In 2009, a team of scientists was granted access to one of these skull fragments housed in Moscow. Their DNA analysis suggested that the fragment did not belong to Hitler but to an unidentified woman. However, Hitler's dental remains, also in Russian custody, were reconfirmed by forensic experts as genuine. The Soviet handling of Hitler's remains controversial. Their secrecy, conflicting reports, and destruction of evidence contributed to ongoing debates about whether Hitler truly died in the bunker or managed to escape. The escape theories: did Hitler flee to South America? Claims of Nazi escape routes, Ratlines. As World War II came to an end and the Third Reich collapsed, high-ranking Nazi officials and war criminals sought ways to evade capture by the Allies. Many of them managed to escape Europe using clandestine routes later referred to as Ratlines, organized networks that helped former Nazis flee, primarily to South America and the Middle East. These escape routes were facilitated by sympathetic organizations, including some members of the Catholic Church, rogue intelligence officers, and even officials in neutral countries like Spain and Switzerland. The two main Ratline routes led to Spain and Portugal. Many Nazis fled to these countries, which had authoritarian regimes that sympathized with or tolerated former Axis officials. From there, they secured passage to South America. Italy and the Vatican connection. Some Nazi fugitives, including Adolf Eichmann and Joseph Mengele, used the Vatican's refugee assistance programs to obtain false identity papers and travel documents. With these, they made their way to Argentina, Brazil, and Chile. South America, particularly Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Chile, became hotspots for Nazi fugitives. Argentina's President Juan Perón was known to have welcomed former Nazis, seeing them as valuable allies against communism. Many war criminals, such as Joseph Mengele, the Angel of Death, and Adolf Eichmann, a key architect of the Holocaust, lived in South America for years before being captured or disappearing entirely. These well-documented Nazi escape routes have fueled conspiracy theories that Adolf Hitler himself may have used them to flee Germany instead of dying in the Berlin bunker. Declassified intelligence reports from the FBI and CIA, along with eyewitness claims, suggest that Hitler may have been sighted in Argentina or elsewhere in South America after 1945. However, no solid evidence has ever confirmed these theories, and mainstream historians maintain that Hitler died in Berlin. Despite this, the existence of the Ratlines proves that Nazi officials had the means and support to escape, leaving open the possibility that if Hitler had survived, he could have followed the same path. This remains one of the strongest arguments behind the Hitler escape theories. Alleged sightings and declassified intelligence reports. In the years following World War II, numerous reports emerged claiming that Adolf Hitler had escaped Berlin and was living in hiding, particularly in South America. These alleged sightings, combined with declassified intelligence documents from the FBI and CIA, have fueled conspiracy theories suggesting that Hitler did not die in the Führerbunker as widely believed. Early reports and Allied uncertainty. Immediately after the fall of Berlin in May 1945, confusion surrounded Hitler's fate. The Soviets were the first to discover the remains believed to be Hitler's, but Joseph Stalin himself cast doubt on the official story. In July 1945, Stalin told Western leaders at the Potsdam Conference that Hitler had likely escaped. This statement, along with Soviet secrecy about Hitler's remains, led to speculation that the Nazi leader might still be alive. FBI and CIA declassified reports. In the late 1940s and 1950s, both the FBI and CIA received hundreds of reports from informants and alleged witnesses claiming to have seen Hitler in various parts of the world. In response, the FBI opened an investigation into whether Hitler had fled to Argentina. Declassified FBI files, which are now publicly available, reveal that intelligence agencies took these reports seriously enough to investigate them. One of the most significant reports came from an informant in 1945, who claimed that Hitler had arrived in Argentina by submarine and was hiding in the foothills of the Andes. This report included descriptions of Hitler supposedly living in a heavily guarded compound with other Nazi officials. While no conclusive evidence was ever found, the fact that these reports were investigated suggests that U.S. intelligence at least considered the possibility of his escape. The CIA also received similar reports in the 1950s. A declassified CIA memo from 1955 detailed an informant's claim that Hitler was alive and living in Colombia. The informant even provided a photograph of a man who allegedly resembled Hitler, though the authenticity of this claim was highly questionable. Despite the lack of concrete proof, these reports contributed to the growing mystery surrounding Hitler's fate. Alleged sightings in South America. Argentina. Many reports placed Hitler in Argentina, particularly in the remote Patagonian region. Some claimed that he was living in a secluded ranch with former SS officers, protected by the Argentine government. Brazil. A few sources suggested that Hitler had relocated to Brazil, where he supposedly lived under an assumed identity. One book even claimed that Hitler survived into old age there. Paraguay and Chile. There were also reports that Hitler had moved between Paraguay and Chile, using the Nazi escape networks, Ratlines, that had already helped other high-ranking Nazis flee to safety. Modern investigations and debunking efforts. While these claims continue to circulate, modern forensic investigations have largely discredited them. In 2009, a team of researchers analyzed a skull fragment that the Russian government had long claimed to be Hitler's. DNA testing revealed that the fragment actually belonged to a woman, not Hitler. However, Hitler's jawbone and dental remains, also held by Russia, were later re-examined and confirmed as authentic, aligning with historical dental records. Although conspiracy theories persist, no verifiable evidence has ever proven that Hitler escaped. The majority of historians maintain that Hitler died in his bunker on April 30, 1945. However, the existence of declassified intelligence reports and the sheer number of alleged sightings continue to fuel debates over what really happened in the final days of the Third Reich. Investigations into Hitler's possible post-war whereabouts. For decades, speculation about whether Adolf Hitler truly died in his Berlin bunker or managed to escape has fueled numerous investigations. While the official historical record states that Hitler died by suicide on April 30, 1945, various government agencies, independent researchers, and conspiracy theorists have explored alternative theories suggesting that he may have fled and lived in hiding. Soviet investigations and secrecy. After Soviet troops captured Berlin, they quickly took control of the Reich Chancellery and the Führerbunker, searching for Hitler's remains. Although they claimed to have found charred bodies, Stalin was not convinced, and conflicting reports emerged from the Soviet Union. Some high-ranking Soviet officials, including Stalin himself, suggested that Hitler had escaped, possibly with the help of the Nazi High Command. The NKVD, the Soviet secret police, launched an extensive investigation, interrogating captured Nazi officials and bunker survivors, including Hitler's valet Heinz Ling and SS officer Otto Gunsch. Their testimonies confirmed Hitler's suicide, but due to the lack of a publicly displayed body, doubts persisted. For decades, the Soviets kept their findings classified, further fueling speculation. Allied intelligence investigations, FBI and CIA reports. During the late 1940s and early 1950s, declassified FBI and CIA files revealed that U.S. intelligence agencies received hundreds of reports claiming that Hitler was alive and hiding, mainly in South America. In 1945, the FBI launched an inquiry after receiving reports that Hitler had fled Germany via submarine and arrived in Argentina. A witness claimed that a group of high-ranking Nazis had established a secret compound in the foothills of the Andes, where Hitler was supposedly in hiding. Although the FBI found no solid proof, they continued to monitor reports of Hitler sightings. A 1955 CIA document detailed an informant's claim that Hitler was alive in Colombia and that he had been photographed. The informant even suggested that Hitler was planning to relocate to Argentina. However, the credibility of the informant was highly questionable, and the agency did not find concrete evidence. These intelligence reports demonstrate that Allied agencies did not immediately dismiss the possibility of Hitler's escape, but ultimately, no verifiable proof was ever uncovered. Eyewitness testimonies and Nazi escape networks. A key argument for the escape theory is the existence of well-documented Nazi escape routes, known as Ratlines, which helped high-ranking officials flee Europe. Many notorious war criminals, such as Joseph Mengele, the Angel of Death, and Adolf Eichmann, successfully escaped to South America and lived undetected for years. Reports from various witnesses claimed that Hitler had been seen. In Argentina, alleged sightings placed him in Patagonia, where he was supposedly living under the protection of Nazi sympathizers. Some witnesses claimed he resided in a secluded ranch in Bariloche, a region known for hosting Nazi fugitives. In Brazil and Paraguay, some theories suggested that Hitler moved between different countries in South America, aided by former SS officers and sympathetic local governments. In Antarctica or a secret base, more extreme theories speculated that Hitler had escaped to a secret Nazi base in Antarctica or even found refuge in Spain, which was ruled by Franco, a known Nazi sympathizer. While these claims were sensational, none were ever substantiated with real evidence. Forensic investigations and DNA analysis. One of the biggest turning points in the investigation came in 2009, when a team of researchers was granted access to a skull fragment that Russia had long claimed belonged to Hitler. DNA testing revealed that the fragment actually belonged to a woman, casting doubt on the authenticity of the Soviet evidence. However, Hitler's jawbone and dental remains, which are still held by Russian authorities, were later re-examined by forensic experts. The results showed that the dental structure matched Hitler's known dental records, supporting the conclusion that he died in the bunker. Conclusion: a case closed or an enduring mystery? Despite the many investigations, no credible evidence has ever been found to prove that Hitler survived beyond April 30, 1945. The overwhelming consensus among historians is that Hitler committed suicide in the Berlin bunker. However, due to early Soviet secrecy, contradictory intelligence reports, and the real existence of Nazi escape routes, the idea of Hitler's escape remains one of history's most persistent conspiracy theories. Forensic evidence and modern analysis, myth or reality? DNA testing on Hitler's alleged remains. The mystery surrounding Adolf Hitler's death has been the subject of countless investigations, with forensic science playing a crucial role in determining whether he truly died in his Berlin bunker in 1945. While Soviet reports claim to have recovered Hitler's remains, the lack of transparency, secrecy, and conflicting evidence led to speculation that the Nazi dictator may have escaped. In recent decades, DNA and forensic analysis have played a pivotal role in examining the authenticity of Hitler's remains, shedding light on one of history's most debated topics. Soviet discovery and initial examinations. When Soviet forces entered Berlin on May 2, 1945, they searched the Reich Chancellery and the Führerbunker for Hitler's body. The Soviets reported finding 2 charred corpses in a shallow crater outside the bunker, allegedly belonging to Hitler and his wife, Eva Braun. These remains were partially burned because Hitler had ordered his body to be cremated after death to prevent public humiliation. To confirm Hitler's identity, Soviet investigators focused on his dental remains. They interrogated Hitler's personal dental assistant Kathy Huserman, as well as his dental technician, who confirmed that the jaw fragments recovered matched Hitler's known dental work, which included gold bridges and missing teeth. Based on this, the Soviets officially declared that Hitler was dead. However, Stalin did not immediately disclose these findings. Instead, he allowed rumors to spread that Hitler might have escaped, fueling conspiracy theories for decades. Long-term storage and secrecy. After the initial investigation, the Soviets took the alleged remains, including a jawbone and a skull fragment, to Moscow for safekeeping. Over the years, these remains were kept highly classified, and Western intelligence agencies had little access to them. In 1970, under the orders of the KGB, Hitler's remaining body parts, aside from the jaw and skull fragment, were reportedly destroyed and scattered in a river to prevent any future Nazi sympathizers from using them as relics. This secrecy only added to speculation about whether the remains were truly Hitler's. 2009 DNA testing on the skull fragment. One of the most shocking developments in Hitler's forensic history came in 2009, when a team of American researchers led by Nick Bellantoni, a forensic scientist from the University of Connecticut, was granted access to a skull fragment that Russian authorities claimed belonged to Hitler. Bellantoni's team conducted DNA analysis on the fragment, and the results contradicted the official Soviet claims. The skull did not belong to Hitler. Instead, the DNA matched that of an unidentified woman under 40 years old. No Y chromosome was detected, which confirmed that the fragment could not have belonged to a male. The size and shape of the fragment did not match historical descriptions of Hitler's skull structure. This revelation cast significant doubt on the Soviet narrative and reignited speculation that Hitler's true remains had never been found. However, it did not necessarily prove that Hitler survived, only that the skull fragment was misidentified. Dental evidence and the confirmation of Hitler's death. While the skull fragment was disproven, another piece of forensic evidence still pointed toward Hitler's death: the jawbone and dental remains stored by Russia. In 2017, French forensic scientist Philippe Charlier was granted access to Hitler's jawbone, which was still held in Russian archives. Charlier's team conducted a detailed examination of the dental remains and concluded the jaw and teeth matched Hitler's known dental records, which had been meticulously documented by his dentist. There were no signs of chewing, indicating that Hitler had not eaten anything significant before his death, consistent with historical reports. Blue discoloration on the teeth suggested cyanide poisoning, which aligned with witness testimonies stating that Hitler bit down on a cyanide capsule before shooting himself. This analysis reaffirmed that Hitler's remains were authentic and that he had indeed died in 1945. Why did conspiracy theories persist? Despite these forensic confirmations, several factors fueled escape theories for decades. Soviet secrecy. The Soviet Union withheld critical evidence for years, allowing speculation to grow. FBI and CIA reports. Declassified intelligence files revealed that U.S. agencies received reports of alleged Hitler sightings in South America, though none were ever verified. The skull fragment confusion. The 2009 discovery that the skull fragment did not belong to Hitler added doubt to the official story. The existence of Ratlines. Many high-ranking Nazis successfully escaped to South America, proving that escape was possible. However, the 2017 dental examination provided the strongest evidence yet that Hitler did not escape and did indeed die in the bunker. Conclusion: the final verdict. Based on forensic evidence, dental records, and historical testimonies, the overwhelming consensus among historians and forensic experts is that Adolf Hitler died in his Berlin bunker on April 30, 1945. While the 2009 DNA test debunked the authenticity of the skull fragment, the jawbone analysis in 2017 reaffirmed his death beyond reasonable doubt. Despite this, Hitler's fate remains one of history's most debated topics, proving how secrecy, misinformation, and the power of conspiracy theories can shape public perception, even when the science says otherwise. The credibility of escape theories versus historical consensus. The debate over Adolf Hitler's fate has captivated historians, conspiracy theorists, and the general public for decades. While the historical consensus maintains that Hitler died by suicide in his Berlin bunker on April 30, 1945, numerous escape theories have persisted, suggesting that the Nazi leader managed to flee to safety, possibly to South America, before the Soviet forces could capture him. These theories have been fueled by early Soviet secrecy, conflicting intelligence reports, and a number of eyewitness testimonies. However, the majority of historical evidence, forensic analysis, and intelligence investigations contradict these escape theories, making them highly questionable in the eyes of mainstream scholars. The historical consensus: Hitler's suicide in the bunker. The overwhelming consensus among historians, based on both primary sources and forensic evidence, is that Adolf Hitler died in his Berlin bunker on April 30, 1945, shortly before Soviet forces took control of the city. The key reasons supporting this conclusion include eyewitness testimonies. Several of Hitler's closest associates, including his personal staff and members of the SS, provided consistent testimonies about the events leading to his death. Hitler's personal valet, Heinz Ling, and his SS aide Otto Gunsch both reported that they had witnessed Hitler's suicide. They confirmed that Hitler took cyanide and shot himself in the head, while Eva Braun, his wife, took cyanide as well. Soviet evidence: the Soviets were the first to enter Berlin, and their search for Hitler's body in the Führerbunker led to the discovery of charred remains. While the initial Soviet reports were vague, they later claimed that dental records, provided by Hitler's personal dentist, confirmed the identity of the remains found in the bunker. Forensic analysis: in 2017, French forensic expert Philippe Charlier and his team confirmed the authenticity of Hitler's dental remains using historical dental records. The cyanide poisoning, consistent with historical accounts of Hitler's suicide method, was also evident in the dental remains. Although a skull fragment believed to belong to Hitler was later found to be from a female, the jawbone and teeth offered conclusive proof of Hitler's death in the bunker. No reliable evidence of escape. Despite numerous theories, there has been no verifiable evidence to prove that Hitler escaped Berlin. Multiple investigations by Allied intelligence agencies, including the FBI and CIA, yielded no concrete proof that Hitler fled the country. The Ratlines, escape routes used by other Nazi officials, did not provide any reliable link to Hitler's escape. The rise of escape theories, origins and claims. While the historical consensus remains steadfast, escape theories have thrived due to a variety of factors. Soviet secrecy and misinformation: the Soviet Union's handling of the evidence surrounding Hitler's remains was shrouded in secrecy. The Soviets initially withheld the identity of the remains and delayed the announcement of Hitler's death. Stalin's reluctance to confirm Hitler's demise to Western powers only added fuel to rumors, as the Soviet government did not release key details until years after the event. The Ratlines and Nazi fugitives: the Ratlines, clandestine escape routes used by Nazi war criminals to flee to South America, have been key to the belief that Hitler could have escaped as well. Many high-ranking Nazi officials, such as Joseph Mengele and Adolf Eichmann, managed to escape via these routes to Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. The fact that other Nazi fugitives were successfully relocated to South America made it plausible to some that Hitler, too, might have used these networks. FBI and CIA investigations: declassified intelligence reports from the FBI and CIA from the 1940s and 1950s revealed that these agencies received numerous reports from informants who claimed to have seen Hitler alive in places like Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia. These reports, while never substantiated, fueled public fascination and theories that Hitler might have escaped to South America, where many Nazis were known to have sought refuge. Eyewitness claims and published accounts: over the years, various individuals have come forward claiming to have seen Hitler after the war. One of the most famous of these is Theodor Morell, who, in 1947, published a memoir stating that he had witnessed Hitler being whisked away to safety. Another report in the 1950s suggested that Hitler had been seen in a remote Argentine compound in Patagonia, surrounded by former Nazi officials. These testimonies, although unverified, fueled the escape narrative. The collapse of escape theories: lack of evidence and forensic findings. While escape theories have persisted, there are several reasons why they are not taken seriously by the majority of historians and forensic experts. Absence of credible evidence: despite decades of investigations, no physical evidence has emerged to support the claim that Hitler survived the war. The FBI and CIA investigations that mentioned Hitler's supposed sightings were based on unreliable informants or false leads, and no eyewitness testimony has provided verifiable proof. The claims of Hitler's escape often relied on speculation rather than hard evidence. The unlikely escape routes, the logistics of Hitler escaping Germany in the final days of the war appear improbable. Berlin was surrounded by the advancing Soviet forces, and Nazi infrastructure had been heavily bombed. It would have been extremely difficult for Hitler to escape under such circumstances, especially without being detected by the Allies or Soviet forces, both of whom were actively searching for him. Post-war Nazi operations. Although many high-ranking Nazis fled Europe using the Ratlines, it's important to note that these escape routes were often used by individuals who had little or no public recognition. Hitler, as the most recognizable and sought-after Nazi leader, would have been extremely difficult to hide. Moreover, he would likely have attracted more attention, even in a remote South American compound, making the success of such an escape highly dubious. Forensic confirmation. The forensic evidence that has emerged in recent years, particularly the 2017 analysis of Hitler's dental remains, makes a compelling case for his death in the bunker. The absence of any conclusive forensic evidence to suggest otherwise undermines the validity of escape theories. Conclusion: the weight of historical consensus. While escape theories continue to capture the imagination of some, the historical consensus that Adolf Hitler died in his Berlin bunker in 1945 remains the most well-supported conclusion. The combination of eyewitness testimonies, forensic evidence, and the absence of reliable evidence for any escape strongly supports the idea that Hitler did not survive the war. The persistence of escape theories, however, highlights the allure of conspiracy theories and the power of uncertainty in historical events. As long as gaps in information exist or official narratives are shrouded in secrecy, alternative explanations will continue to arise. But the weight of historical and forensic evidence firmly places Hitler's death in the bunker as the most credible account, leaving the escape theories to fade into the realm of speculation. Why the mystery persists and fuels conspiracy theories. The mystery surrounding Adolf Hitler's death continues to captivate the imagination of people worldwide, and despite the overwhelming evidence that he died in his Berlin bunker on April 30, 1945, conspiracy theories about his survival and escape remain alive and well. The persistence of these theories is not only due to the lack of complete transparency at the time of his death but also the broader cultural and psychological factors that make such theories appealing. In understanding why the Hitler death mystery persists and fuels the spread of conspiracy theories, several key factors come into play: historical uncertainty, government secrecy, cultural fascination with the extraordinary, and psychological tendencies that make people more inclined to accept alternative explanations in the face of ambiguous or incomplete historical records. 1. The role of Soviet secrecy and early misinformation. One of the biggest reasons conspiracy theories about Hitler's death persist is the secrecy and lack of transparency surrounding the events after his demise. When the Soviet forces entered Berlin in May 1945, they quickly located what they claimed to be Hitler's remains but withheld information about them for several years. The Soviet Union's classified nature and Stalin's strategic decision to keep critical details about Hitler's death under wraps helped foster uncertainty and speculation. Initial Soviet secrecy. The Soviets initially made vague statements about finding remains, but it wasn't until the late 1940s that they released more details. This delay in releasing clear information allowed rumors to flourish. Additionally, some early reports from Soviet sources claimed that Hitler's body had been burned beyond recognition, which raised questions about the authenticity of the remains. The Soviet government's reluctance to fully disclose evidence and to prevent Western nations from inspecting the remains only fueled suspicions. The absence of immediate verification. The Soviet Union did not provide Western investigators with access to the remains until years later. The lack of external verification, especially from Allied forces, left room for doubt about whether Hitler's remains had truly been found or if they belonged to him. This secrecy became the fertile ground in which conspiracy theories could grow. 2. The post-war power vacuum and the desire for a larger narrative. The end of World War II was a momentous event, but the rapid downfall of the Nazi regime created a sense of uncertainty and unfinished business for many. Hitler was not just a leader, he was a symbol of power, fear, and destruction. His dramatic fall from power and the loss of his life raised profound questions about the nature of evil, responsibility, and the consequences of his actions. The mystery surrounding his death allowed for the creation of a larger narrative that sought to reconcile the ideals of justice with the question of whether he escaped punishment. Desire for a larger mythology. Some individuals and groups needed a narrative that suggested Hitler's fate was not just one of death, but one of continued influence and survival. This provided a sense that evil had not been completely vanquished and that the Nazi cause had not truly been defeated, but rather, continued secretly. The idea that Hitler escaped allowed this larger mythology to persist. If he survived, the specter of Nazism could live on, lurking in the shadows. In some cases, such theories offered a more compelling, albeit sinister, explanation for the post-war world. The power of a conspiracy theories, in general, thrive in moments of political and social uncertainty. After the war, Europe was left to rebuild, and the world grappled with the ideological aftershocks of the Nazi regime. For some, the idea that Hitler had escaped to continue plotting and inspiring others allowed them to feel that the war had not truly ended in a final defeat of his ideology. 3. The persistence of eyewitness testimonies and the myth of survival. Eyewitness testimony has long been a cornerstone of conspiracy theories. In the case of Hitler, numerous individuals have come forward with stories that suggest Hitler survived the war or was seen in locations far removed from the events at the end of April 1945. These claims often contradict official accounts, but their persistence and dramatic nature help keep the mystery alive. Alleged sightings in South America. The claim that Hitler escaped to South America became a central part of conspiracy theories. Numerous supposed eyewitnesses from South America, especially from the Patagonian region of Argentina, have claimed to have seen Hitler after the war. Some conspiracy theorists point to the fact that many high-ranking Nazis were successfully relocated to South America via the Ratlines, escape routes organized by Nazi sympathizers, as proof that Hitler could have made a similar escape. False claims of Hitler's survival. A number of publications and books have pushed the narrative of Hitler's survival, often based on the testimonies of dubious or unverified sources. The mystique of Hitler as a larger-than-life figure has made it easier for myths and rumors to spread. The stories of supposed sightings and survival fit neatly into the idea that a person of such power could not simply die. His death, if it occurred at all, was often seen as inconclusive or fabricated, especially when there were no concrete witnesses to the exact moment of his demise. 4. Psychological factors and the appeal of conspiracy theories. Psychologically, there are several reasons why conspiracy theories about Hitler's survival continue to attract attention. Human nature plays a large role in how we process incomplete or ambiguous information, and conspiracy theories often offer a simplified answer to complex, unsettling questions. Need for certainty. Humans have a psychological tendency to want closure and certainty, particularly with historical events as significant as World War II. Conspiracy theories provide a clear narrative when historical facts are inconclusive or difficult to grasp. The mystery surrounding Hitler's death, with gaps in the official record and the inconsistent accounts from different sources, leaves a psychological opening for alternative explanations. Confirmation bias. People tend to seek out and accept information that confirms their existing beliefs or suspicions. If someone already believes in the idea that Hitler survived the war, they are more likely to focus on anecdotal accounts or outlier evidence that supports this theory, while dismissing conflicting evidence as part of a cover-up. Suspicion of official narratives. There is also a widespread distrust of official stories, especially when they come from powerful government institutions. In the case of Hitler's death, the Soviet Union's secrecy and the slow release of information provided fertile ground for suspicion. For some, the lack of transparency led them to believe that the official account of his death was part of a larger cover-up. 5. The cultural fascination with extraordinary stories. Finally, there is an inherent cultural fascination with stories that deviate from the mundane or ordinary. The possibility that Adolf Hitler, one of history's most infamous and hated individuals, might have survived and lived out his life in secret adds an element of drama and intrigue to his narrative. The specter of a hidden evil, the idea that Hitler could have escaped and continued to exert influence in the world provides a sense that evil has a surreptitious and enduring power. In a world often struggling with issues of global conflict, social justice, and political instability, the idea that Hitler lived on as a covert agent of malevolent influence gives rise to darker, more complex narratives about the state of the world. Entertainment and pop culture, films, documentaries, and books about Hitler's alleged survival have kept the mystery alive in public consciousness. From fictional portrayals to more sensationalized non-fiction accounts, pop culture continually reintroduces the mystery to new generations, keeping interest in the topic alive. This constant media portrayal of the escape theory helps perpetuate the myth, even when historical evidence suggests otherwise. Conclusion: the enduring mystery. Despite the mounting evidence supporting the historical consensus that Adolf Hitler died in his bunker in 1945, the mystery of his death persists due to a combination of historical gaps, psychological factors, cultural appeal, and government secrecy. These elements have created an environment in which conspiracy theories about his survival can flourish, especially in the face of incomplete or contradictory information. For some, the escape narrative offers a more dramatic and less definitive conclusion to the Nazi regime's end, and for others, it serves as a vehicle to perpetuate broader fears about evil, power, and the possibility of hidden forces still at work in the world.